Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Now, historic films made in the spring of 1948 and just released show Eniwetok preparing for heavily guarded and still largely secret tests of new atomic weapons. The test's purpose is to measure atomic effects on thousands of different materials, 30,000 tons of them, not, as at Bikini, to prove military effectiveness.
San Francisco police say that 9 persons have been arrested in a narcotics raid on the headquarters of the Grateful Dead, a widely popular singing group. 2 members of the group, Rod McKernan and Robert Weir, and their business manager, Danny Rifkin, have been booked on suspicion of possessing narcotics.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
We got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Well, strange lights are causing a viral buzz on YouTube. Could we have caught extraterrestrial activity on a recent newscast? Brandon Arroyo investigates.
As the newscast ended, the controversy began back on September 26th. What is that light shining in the back of the dark night sky?
With coverage reaching all the way back to 1948, for over 70 years, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Now, Fate Magazine Radio is carrying on that tradition of setting the standard in paranormal talk radio as we report and discuss some of the most mysterious and perplexing phenomena imaginable in this strange world of ours. Now, here is your host of Fate Magazine Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. Welcome to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I am Kat Hobson, your host, or as my friend Rick likes to say, the voice of Fate. I'll take that. I am so pleased that you are here. I'm even more pleased to welcome Miss Denise Pridemore's newest grandchild to the world. And Denise, congratulations. She is beautiful. Her name is Clover. And I think that is just absolutely fascinating. And be sure when you tune in tomorrow night to the Paranormal Pride, even if she's not live, she will be doing chat because that's what she does. And be sure and tell her, congratulations, because it was awesome. And she was a big baby girl. And we've got folks here in chat already, and I know that we're going to be getting some really terrific questions. You know, I am very excited because y'all have heard these guests before, and their new book is just absolutely incredible. They started out being good friends. They ran across each other all the time, several times. They had spontaneous memories of past lives, and so they just went and got past life regression training with Dr. Brian Weiss, and they're excellent at spreading their message, which basically is love and kindness. They teach different methodologies for healing, and their holistic approaches actually are pretty neat. They teach meditation at their local university as well as senior centers. Dr. Dave was a nurse before he was a doctor, and so he is now serving as the Vice President of Medical Affairs at a small Midwestern hospital. And Carla recently retired as his office manager. And they now share their message together. And they're interesting. I was very blessed through our first conversation, and I highly anticipate this one. I am so glad that you are here. Carla and Dave, welcome. Welcome
Thanks,
to Faith.
Kat, for having us.
Yes,
I'm
Kat, it's
thrilled.
an absolute pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm finding it a pleasure to have you here, so I appreciate that. Now, this is not your first book, obviously. You started with The Gift of Past Lives with Mother, Isabella, God, and Elizabeth. And I actually love your second one. It was so interesting. Hell No, Resurrection.
Reincarnation.
Oh, tongue twist. Actually, I love that one too. But I kid. But Hell No, Reincarnation. Again, with Mother Isabella, God, and Elizabeth. This new one, the manual, I cannot wait to discuss. It's blowing my mind just reading up on it. It's just so interesting, the whole idea. So, yeah, y'all started to write these books, and the first two came out kind of boom, boom. Were they just laying in there waiting to be released? Or, what led you to this? I know, obviously, your past history, the fact that you have been together for so many lifetimes, but what brought this about?
Well, Kat, back in 6-7 years ago, we sort of had a spiritual experience while meditating, and we started journaling everything that happened. We started getting lots of life lessons. We had an original first past life memory, and it was different for us because we were both raised Catholic. Neither one of us believed in reincarnation. And one day while meditating, I had this memory of a life where I saw Carla and Allie, and she looked sort of like Carla, and I could tell it was her by her steel blue eyes, but she was wearing this flapper outfit. Her hair was kind of slicked back. I saw big flashes of light and bangs, and I got shot in the chest and was thrown back. And I was telling her about this memory that I remembered while I was meditating, and it was just very strange. The next day I had more information on that same thing and that same life, and I remembered meeting this woman at a wedding of a man named Angelo, and her name was Ruby Donaldson, and she was from Bullock, Georgia, and she told me her father was James, and she had moved to Chicago to become a dressmaker.
A dressmaker?
A dressmaker. Now, she ended up working for a man named Angelo as she was trying to get established and was working at a dress shop. Well, really a sweatshop because she was making clothes.
A sweatshop, yeah.
Yeah. And Carla was interested in this funny story that I'm telling her because it's like a story out of, with so many little details. We're walking along the shoreline in Chicago, and Ruby is having a full conversation with me. And there was a day Carla was off and she ran off to do research because we didn't understand what was going on.
And I should say that Dave didn't really believe in reincarnation, but I've always been a lot more open-minded. I thought it was a possibility, even though I wasn't raised to believe in reincarnation through church. But when this all began and we started to meditate and Dave started to see things, pictures, not knowing that he had a gift to connect with the spiritual world, he wasn't aware of that until in 2014 when we began meditation. So I wasn't really surprised because I was open-minded when we started to get bits and pieces and we started to journal everything, pictures and faces and that sort of thing. So when Dave had this memory and he was able to give me specific names, I went to Ancestry.com and I found a Ruby Donaldson, born in 1904 in Bullock, Georgia. I could find that she was born to James and Anna Donaldson, one of 11 children. I found pictures of Ruby's parents, and I found some pictures of her brothers and sisters. I wasn't able to find pictures of Ruby. I also found a couple of newspaper articles. One was the wedding of Angelo Genna to Lucille Spinola, and Angelo Genna was the head mobster in the North End before Al Capone in Chicago. And then I found a picture of his wedding cake, which was the reason it was in the newspapers because it was over 10 feet tall. They were serving over 3,000 mobsters. So
Good heavens.
we could we could corroborate those things, and that just made us more interested in journaling. So if you can imagine, we've had many years to accumulate. We have lots of journals full of all the information that Dave has received speaking with his spirit guide. So you asked about the books. We already have book 4 finished and we're working on book 5.
Good gracious.
Yeah. We have a lot of information.
This is just flowing for y'all.
Yes.
It's hard to say this, Kat, because sometimes I say, we're writing these books and we're doing some of the research, but sometimes we sit down and I just talk because Isabella, who is my spirit guide, talks to me. And if you look at the titles of all of our books, there's Mother Isabella, God, and Elizabeth on that. Isabella's my spirit guide. She's been with me for 6,000 years through 42 different lives. Elizabeth is Carla's spirit guide, who's been with her also for 6,000 years and through 34 lives. The mother in there is actually Carla's mother, because one day while meditating, this woman came to me, and I have to tell you, Carla's mother actually died before I ever bought the practice where Carla was the office manager, so I'd never met her. But this woman came to me, reminded me of Carla, and she kept showing me a shoe. And Carla ran over to the computer and brought up these 60 shoes, and I went over and said, this is the shoe she's showing me. And Carla goes, well, that's the dance shoe that my mother always wore because she was a ballroom dancer.
Ah.
So those 4 entities or beings, Mother Isabella, God, and Elizabeth, have been speaking to us at various times. And they've been more than willing to share lessons with us, more than willing to take me to past lives and Carla to past lives. And by the time that we got book number 1 ready to start writing, we had found 29 past lives that Carla and I had had together. We also found many other people that we knew in the same lives. Now, not always all the same people, but many of the same people. And so we knew that we traveled in soul groups or family mates or in karmic mates. And we started doing as much research as we could. And we found research on spontaneous memory by children by Ian Stevenson and James Matlock and Jim Tucker. And many of the stories were sort of like the spontaneous memories that I had. We had bits and pieces, and then Isabella started filling in more bits and pieces. And we couldn't not start writing about our experience, because it changed the way we looked at a lot of different things. Now, again, Kat, I'll say God has been in every one of our experiences. And one of the very first lessons we got from Isabella was there is no hell. That reincarnation was God's plan from the beginning, life after life, learning, trying to grow, overcome, and return back home. And even though we were raised Catholic, it became a beautiful message that we really aren't here to fail or make it. We're here until we learn how to make it. And Isabella's shared what are really the 5 simple rules, which is live a life without conceit, selfishness, jealousy, unforgiveness, and make every decision out of love. And it becomes the actual definition of karma. That we're here to learn a lesson, lessons of compassion. We may have to put ourselves in some situations because we were conceited, selfish, jealous, or unforgiving. But when we start making those decisions and learn those decisions, that all of our intentions have to be made out of love, we can actually get off this wheel and return back to God, Creator, Tao, Source, whatever people want to name God. Now, I say God because I was raised Catholic, and God is the way I look at it.
Right.
And so we kept journaling, kept doing the research. So the first book has 20 of our past lives, lessons after every life, many of the lessons we learned from Isabella. The second book is filled with a lot of research based on religion. If you look at the Bible, and I think the Bible can be an excellent guide, there's a lot of very good lessons in there. But if you go back to the Old Testament, what is the Old Testament? God made a covenant with Adam, and he failed. So God made another covenant with Abraham, and he failed. Then God made another covenant with Noah, and he failed. He made another covenant with King David, and he failed. Each time that Jewish people failed at reaching their goal, and it's really interesting if you look in the book of Leviticus, the word sin was originally written as an Arabic word, which was kata. And kata means fail to reach your goal. It doesn't mean sin. It means fail to reach your goal. So the book of Leviticus, book of Leviticus says, if you don't reach your goal, the book of Leviticus about atonement, the time between lives, chance after chance, which is what God has given humankind. And in each chance, you get another chance to try to get it right and return back to God.
Well, that actually seems interesting, because to be apart from God isn't something that he wants, and it's not something that we should want either. So I would imagine that we're always striving to achieve that, even if we're not aware of the situation in its entirety.
Correct. And, the other thing we like to say, Kat, is if you look back at history, it seems that most religions seem to say that there's a spot where God quit trying to reach us.
No.
The Bible says, Jesus was this final messenger, or Muhammad says he's the final messenger, or the Jewish people had all these other prophets. Many other religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, etc., all believe in reincarnation. In fact, 33% of the world's population believes in it.
Yeah.
However, if you go back, there are hundreds of Christian, Muslim, and Jewish mystics that continue to get messages from God. If you go out into most spiritual websites, people are still getting messages from God. Why did we think that God quit reaching out to us?
Well, I'm going to tell you that the average person, if they will be still for a minute, is being reached out to by God or Creator or Source or whatever they want to call it. But we have to go to our first break, and I can't believe 20 minutes is gone. You have so many questions waiting in chat, and we will get to those. Y'all come back with us. We will be just a couple of minutes.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. Since 1948, Fate Magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the world wide web of weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I am so glad you are here. I am really fortunate to have Dave and Carla here again because their experiences are not unlike other people's, but they're just much better at explaining and describing them. They're well versed in this. They started meditating, and all of this information, once they were connected to Source, just started coming. And they are both Catholics. They didn't They didn't really believe, or had been taught not to believe, in some of the things that they found happening to them. So that was an enigma, I would imagine, right, y'all?
It was a surprise.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It certainly has changed the way we look at everything in life, Kat.
Well, I imagine so. I'm curious as to what changed as far as your outlook about death relevant to this. Do you feel confident that you're going to be together throughout time? Do you feel that you're progressing together through your lessons? Do you feel
I need
that...
to answer that.
Okay.
Dave is as pure as the driven snow. So I'm really surprised that he's on 42. Now, every life that you have, even if you are a miscarriage, it counts as a life because there's a lesson learned there for somebody, not necessarily infant. But I'm surprised that I don't have more lives. Now, having said that, it's because I have sat in atonement longer or life review longer. So if that tells you anything, Dave apparently gets things quicker. He must be kinder, sweeter, nicer, and I must be a slower learner because I'm in atonement longer and therefore only have 34 lives.
Well, what does that mean to be in atonement longer?
Well, in religion, they call it atonement. You know, churches say that when you die, you know, and then you meet your maker and you go to judgment. Well, it isn't that horrible and scary. Like there's a choice being made that either you're, you know, going straight to heaven or you're going straight to hell. That's not how it goes. When you die, you actually acclimate for 3 days. You lose your senses, so that takes some time for you to go back into that spiritual form. And then you go before your council, and your council are people that you have lived with in past lives. They know you, they speak for you, but they've been watching you, and they're there to help you and guide you and explain to you what you did positively and negatively in the life you're just coming from. So during that time, that is called atonement or your life review. And then when they're finished with that, you actually sit and they explain to you, if you're coming back, what they think is best for you. Now, your spirit guide's in on it, council's in on it, God's in on it, and they're all there to help you make it further. If we all made our own choices, we would all choose to be billionaires in good health traveling around. And that's not how it goes because we have lessons to learn. And the only way that we will learn them is through adversity, is through different types of situations. So they set you up in those situations. Now, often you come back with your family mates because you know them, you're familiar, you get along with them. But then you also have your karmic mates, and they will have you come back with those karmic mates. For instance, my next door neighbor who just moved not too long ago, he's been in 21 of our lives. We have some serious karma with him. I hope on our part that we have, I'll say fix. I hope we have fixed our karma with him on our side. Now, if he chooses not to, that's between him and God, not us. But anyway, does that answer your question on atonement or life review?
Well, I think that it does. And
yeah, here, Kat, I'll throw something out. Just again, through all of these spiritual experiences, there was a time I got to watch my father's last past life review. And I can give you just sort of the way this works. A couple lives ago, my father was a slave trader, and he chained people up in the base of his boat. So he split up families. In his next life, which when he was my father as J.J. Wright in the story of Ruby and J.J., the first memory that we had, he was my father, but he lost my mother during childbirth. My sister had been abducted. And so he was split from his family, much like he had done as a slave trader, so he would learn compassion of what it was like to lose your family. And then in this life, a really wonderful man. However, he spent the last 20 years of his life with Parkinson's, literally chained to a wheelchair. That's how these lessons come. Now, my father overcame being chained to his wheelchair and continued to be positive, upbeat, doing good things for people, making a difference in the world. So he actually was making choices based out of love and not out of self-pity for being in a wheelchair, not out of anger for being in a wheelchair. He continued to be positive. That's the kind of lessons that we need to learn. Even in adversity, we have to overcome and make loving choices.
And with our books, the first book, like Dave said, we have 20 of our lives. The second book, Hell No Reincarnation, there's 7 of ours. In the manual, there's 1 of our lives that's weaved throughout the book. And these are fun and they're entertaining. They're in the books to entertain, but they're in the books to show people and teach people the lessons. So reincarnation, yes, it's fun to learn who we are, who we've been, because we've all been kings and queens, rich and poor, white, black, saints, sinners. We've played all those roles. Everybody has. But the important thing is to learn while we're here. Figure out what it is that we're doing that's negative so that we don't keep taking it with us and repeating the same things over and over again. So when we wrote Hell No Reincarnation, that was our way of reconciling the first book and our experiences with reincarnation and what we had learned through research. And then when we wrote the manual was written because my entire life I've said things probably as an excuse. I never got the manual.
Right.
So it became a way for us to learn additionally. Because if we know what we're made up of, how we're made, why we're made, then that gives us a little heads up. Now we can't possibly know. We all know what our astrological sign is, but we can't possibly know what our archetype is or our trait. However, we have friends and family that know us very well, and they pay attention, and they observe us, and they can tell us pretty much who we are. And when you know those 3 combinations, then you know what you're here to be doing. So again, the lessons. So the manual was written to try and the 3 books together. The first book kind of explains about our journey. The second book kind of rectifies it. And the third book kind of takes everybody along for the healing with us and with us telling them how it's done, how to pay attention and learn.
Well, it sounds like a perfect trilogy that is being added to as we speak.
Yes.
So, I really think that it's a great gift that you have brought this information forward. So many people, as you said, are unaware. I know something about that. I am not well versed in the traits and the archetypes. I know I didn't say that right. But
that was good, Kat.
It's a good effort, right? But Sherry has a question, which is, what are each of their favorite past lives that they've found so far, like the most interesting to you, and how do you evolve from where you start with each new one to be able to determine these traits and the knowledge of what you are?
Okay, that's a big question. Carla, tell them your favorite past life first.
Well, Dave and I both have a favorite past life. We were Sarah and Robert. We were in England. It was a very simple life despite all the adversity. We were husband and wife, married very young, but we just loved each other, and we were kind and nice. We lived in the Cotswold area of England. And unfortunately, even after I died at an early age, Robert, Dave, went on and he didn't whine and mope and complain. He actually still continued to live a productive life. And we both liked that life because it was simple and easy, uncomplicated. Dave, what do you have to add to that?
It was an emotional life because there's part of it in the book where I talk about being on the deck of the boat as we're leaving England to go to the United States, well, to America, and Sarah won't be coming with me. And so it's an emotional life for us, and it's a beautiful life because we were caring and good people. Now, your listener asked about their favorite life, and I can tell you my least favorite life, which is a life at the Mayan times. It's approximately 700 BC. It is a time of human sacrifice, praying to sun gods. There are children when we're not at battle with other nations and we have prisoners that we've captured. We actually bleed children out, not trying to kill them, but it was the sacrifice to bleed from children's arms that were virgins and then feed their blood into the sun god. It was horrific. And the memories, I could feel holding prisoners down while the chief priest would kill them and drain their blood. It was horrific memories. I cried for days when we had this memory.
Again, we've been saints and sinners, everybody.
Now, it's very hard when you go into a life like that where you realize the culture changes you and you're something different. Now, I was just doing what people do, and there's a lesson in there because somewhere along the line I realized no religion could ask you to do this because it's horrific.
Yes.
So I learned that lesson in this life. However, many lives later, I have a life where I'm a young boy who stutters. And when Isabella came in and said, no wonder you stuttered in this life. You didn't speak up for the children in that life.
Interesting.
Kat, what was the other part of the question, the last part?
The last part was the most interesting. What is the most interesting to you?
Okay, well, I think Dave just explained that. But what we should say is Dave was unaware of his gift. Just like there's mediums and psychics out there, I guess if you had to define Dave, you'd call him a mystic, but we don't like that word. He doesn't like to think he has any type of special gift because we all have the capability of reaching the spiritual world. And like you said, Kat, it's whether we take the time to quiet our minds. That's why we recommend meditation, because that's how this all began with us. Had we not begun to meditate, Dave would not have known, because he's had this gift in past lives. Sometimes he found out, sometimes he did not. But even with myself, through meditation, I get past life. I'm not able to access it like Dave does, because Dave can just take himself right to that life. And I have regressed Dave on many occasions, but he can take himself right back to that life. And that's why we have such detail in our books, because he can explain everything down to what we're wearing. We know all of our names, all of our astrological signs, all of our where we lived, how many children we had, who they were, and if they're in this life, who they are, what we died from, in all of our 29 past lives together, because he's able to get all these details. Again, unless you meditate and you quiet your mind, you'll never know what your gift is. And you don't have to have a gift like that. You have to quiet your mind through meditation so that your spirit guide and your angels can reach you and help you.
Sometimes it's very difficult to quiet your mind.
Always.
Especially if you're not aware. I found that I have done that. I've done guided meditations. I did a guided meditation. Actually, it wasn't guided, but it was in an environment that would help you to respond if you had an experience. And it was a little bit freaky for me because the first thing, as it was ending, all of a sudden I had a gray in my vision, or I had a vision of a gray. And I was just kind of taken aback because it was like there was nothing. I was just in darkness. I was mellow. And then all of a sudden, boom, there was this creature. And I was just like, don't know why that showed up, And it was at the end of the meditation period, but it was so interesting to me that I started researching that. What were you going to say, Dave?
I was going to say, it's always interesting to me because people have an experience and they wonder why. And there's lots of reasons that you have the experience. There must be something you need to learn. But the other thing is, why are people surprised? There are multiple mediums, multiple people that have spiritual experiences, people that have NDEs, that all talk about seeing their family during the NDEs, or seeing spirits, seeing beings of light, seeing God, or seeing Jesus. And, again, I make references back to the Bible because so many people wonder, but in the Old Testament, Samuel is one of the judges and he dies, and he appears back to King Saul as a dead person, speaking to King Saul. In the New Testament, Jesus appears with Moses and Isaiah, who have both died, and he's talking to spirits of the past in the New Testament. So a connection between this world and the old world, or this world and a past life, or the spiritual world, is biblical. It's also experience that all these mediums have, and we've been told that there are mediums whose real purpose is to help those people in atonement reach their family members to tell them, it's okay, I'm not mad at you. Because it's part of the atonement, is to apologize for what you might have done wrong in your past life. And so all of those things are not only biblical, they're experiences that go across a wide range of people. People on Fate Magazine and your other podcasts have experiences with ghosts, and ghosts are dead people.
They sure are.
Okay, now.
I will say that there is some discussion about that, but I agree with you.
They've passed over, even if they're more present and more physically, if they're seeing apparitions, because they don't really speak. It's a telepathic. It's a connection in your mind.
It is.
The connection in your mind, since we are people who have five senses, we put what we experience into our five senses and we see something. That doesn't mean that they're physically seeable.
Yes.
Exactly. It's what we experience, because we experience with senses, and our brain only
experience
reads
what we recognize.
Correct.
Yes.
But we have to take a break because but we will be right back. Y'all come back too.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello, I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. Since 1948, Fate Magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the World Wide Web of Weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I am so glad that you are here because this conversation is fascinating to me. And, you know, I always kid and say that if y'all could just hear the conversations during the breaks, and that someday somebody's actually going to record them, but it's not going to be me that shares them. Because sometimes I do record the shows through Skype if I have a bad connection. But at any rate, Dave, I am so sorry because I just kind of dished you out right there so fast. But, and the conversation is just so terrific. I did find a question that I had missed, but this one's not really a question. It's like, oh, so this could also have to do with soulmates, or like if you meet someone for the first time and you instantly click and you feel like you've known them forever. Well, you probably have, right?
That's the case, Kat. You've probably known them in other lives and they recognize them. It's the same thing that happens with deja vu. You're in a situation that you've been in before and you remember the situation, even if it's not exactly the same, because it's telling you that you've been in this situation before and you have a reason to either worry or be happy. And somewhere we were talking, Kat, and we discussed the fact that meditation, past life regression, spontaneous memory, the time between wake and sleep. It's really interesting, Kat, because there's actually a physiological thing that occurs in the brain at that time. During hypnosis, during the time between wake and sleep, and while meditating, you actually stimulate theta and alpha waves in the brain, both at the front and the back of the brain. And that's the same time that you access the subconscious memory. And so deja vu can be a subconscious memory that is jumping out even when you're not in one of those states to tell you that you've been in this situation or you know this person. And so you have sort of a guess what's going to happen. And if this makes sense, the subconscious saves everything from your current life and your past lives. And it sort of works like this. You know, when you touch something that's hot, it burns you. The second time you touch something hot, you pull back faster because you've already learned that it's hot. The same thing is true with past life memories. If you were swimming in the past and you drowned and that's how you died in a past life, you'll be anxious when you're swimming in water. And sometimes actually going back during past life regression in people and taking them back and they find out that they died when they drowned actually relieves that pressure, and they realize, well, I'm a better swimmer now. The events are not the same. I didn't go down at sea with the water that's 300 feet deep. I can swim in my swimming pool because I'm not going to drown.
Right.
And sometimes that gets rid of that past life phobia. So again, it's that subconscious memory that keeps jumping up and reminds you that this might be something you should worry about.
And Kat, we do touch on soulmates in the manual.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you meet somebody and you feel drawn to them immediately because it could be an intended. Everybody is born with an intended, and it's not necessarily that you're intended to be in a love relationship with them, but it could be that you're intended to be with them to do something else, to achieve something else. But intendeds and soulmates are touched upon in the manual because there's a lot of speculation out there, and you hear a lot of things about twin flames and my split soul and all of those things. So we do go through and explain everything that Dave's spirit guide has explained to him, what the differences are, what's true, what isn't. So if you're interested in knowing exactly what a soulmate is, it's in there. And I would explain it all now, except it's too detailed. It's many pages.
Right.
Yeah,
well,
the one thing I'll tell you.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kat. Oh, the one thing I will tell you, Kat, is sometimes people put so much weight on this twin flame. They say it's the other half of you that you haven't found. And I will just say, God would create you whole, not a half of you.
Yeah.
No one completes you. They might compliment you, but you're complete on your own.
Yes,
That's
I
one
have
of those lessons in life.
I have a difficult time with the twin flame concept personally, simply because I don't think that you would have someone placed, I don't think that there is someone that is going to be sent to you that is going to completely disrupt the lives of everyone around you because you can't resist being with this person.
That's right. Love is about choice.
It sets things asunder.
Yep. That's another perfect lesson, though, when you bring this up, because love is always a choice.
Mm-hmm.
We have free will in this world because the only way you can love is if you choose it freely. Otherwise, if it's coerced or forced, you can't punish somebody into loving you. It doesn't work.
Nope. It does not. And, I'm glad that you actually brought that up because I've really never talked about that on the air. And it's something that when I very first started seeing these groups relevant to light workers and all the other things that went with that, I just had such a struggle because people were always talking about, well, I found my twin flame and, I'm going to Australia to be with them and, all this other stuff. And it's like, no, I don't think so. And, I don't think that's how that's supposed to work. But what do I know, right? Well, turned out that I was much more clear on that than I thought I was.
Absolutely.
Because it's not supposed to work that way. And, because I actually had to leave a couple of groups because I was struggling with that whole concept to try to get the idea, my head wrapped around the idea, and to not be judgmental and just a dipstick.
Kat, I don't think you're a dipstick.
I was very opinionated on the topic.
Well,
and that wasn't going to do anybody any good. So, that just wasn't something I needed to be voicing out loud there all the time. So
Kat, we're going to talk about something else then, just a little bit.
Yes.
We're going to talk again. We were talking about karma, and really the definition of karma is doing those things out of conceit, selfishness, jealousy, and unforgiveness. And it's really interesting that we were taught that lesson early on, because in the manual we were taught another lesson. We were taught before that we all have an angel. And we're all given an angel based on our astrological sign. And astrological signs are grouped in groups of 3, which are really related to conceit, selfishness, jealousy, and unforgiveness. And we each get an angel related to that. And I'm going to let Carla give some of the details because she's better at it.
Well, in the manual, we actually have a color picture. It's a color angel karmic wheel. And there's lots of 12s in the universe. We actually discuss a lot of the 12s in the manual. But there's 12 astrological signs, there's 12 traits, there's 12 archetypes. But the angel karmic wheel is actually broken into 4 groups of 3. And I'll start at the beginning. There's Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries, or I should say Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries. And they have a yellow angel, which is from Mariel's Legion. And that is the angel of selfishness. Again, remember, that doesn't necessarily mean you're being selfish right now, but in your past life, you had tendencies towards selfishness. So God gave you an angel to help you. And selfishness can be not that you just, took the last piece of cake. It could be that you're selfish with your time. So after Aries, then we have...
And Kat, just to throw that out, Carla and I both fall in that. We don't consider ourselves particularly selfish people, but that means we had a selfish tendency before.
Yes. And I can tell you that our last life, we died as very little children, but it was probably from the Ruby and JJ life, because as the flapper and the junior banker that JJ was, we didn't take into consideration. We just wanted to be together, which ultimately caused our demise. But a lot of other people were dragged into it, and that would fall under selfishness.
Okay.
So after that, after Aries comes Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer. And they actually have a pink angel under Shamuel's Legion, and that's the angel of conceit. Following through, then we have Leo, Virgo, and Libra, and they have a green angel. That's Raphael's Legion, and that is the angel of jealousy. And then following after that, we have Scorpio, Sagittarius, and Capricorn, and they have the red angel from Uriel's Legion of unforgiveness. So if you ask yourself today, how do I know what I did wrong in the past and where should I begin? Well, your astrological sign is a very good place to start, because you know your astrological sign, and and if you're looking in the manual and the color chart, you know who your angel, whose legion your angel comes from. So you know what you need to be conscious of. If you're a Scorpio, make sure you're forgiving, because you've got that red angel, which meant you were unforgiving in the past. If you're a Leo, you have that angel from Raphael's Legion, and you had a problem with jealousy in the past. So this is a pretty good indication of where you can begin.
Well, that would be red. So
red for you?
It would be, yes.
Are you a Scorpion, Sagittarian, or Capricorn?
I am a Scorpion.
You're a Scorpion. So let's see here what we can tell you about your Scorpion self.
Well, we have to go to the top of the hour break.
Okay.
But this is a good cliffhanger.
Okay.
We'll find out more about Kat after the break.
Well, you know what? I am very interested in this. I think it's neat. So thank y'all for doing it. Thank y'all for being here. And we are just about to have a fantastic time with looking at all of the things. So y'all come back and you can hear about it too. Enjoy the knees. We'll be right back.
This message comes from NPR sponsor Get Feedback. In today's business climate, customer centricity is king. With Get Feedback, you get customer insights that you can act on while they're still relevant. Build a stellar CX program. Visit getfeedback.com today.
Live from NPR News, I'm Janine Herbst. President Biden plans to continue promoting his infrastructure plan and its benefits for the country's future, both for jobs and the economy's bottom line this week. Biden says his Buy America plan will help people get well-paying jobs while decreasing the reliance on China for manufactured goods. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the U.S. has lagged behind China for too long.
The United States needs to approach that competition from a position of strength. And the number one thing we can do to accomplish that is to invest in ourselves, in our infrastructure, in our innovation, in our manufacturing, in our people.
Republicans, though, are upset over the $2.3 trillion price tag. GOP Senator John Barrasso says a number of more environmentally friendly facets should be cut to save money.
This is a staggering amount of spending, like someone with a new credit card. And these are for things that we don't necessarily need. We certainly can't afford, but they're going to delight the liberal left of the party.
Both men there speaking on ABC's This Week. As coronavirus cases fell sharply over most of the U.S. in the past month, Oregon has seen a hike in cases, prompting the governor to issue a new round of restrictions. From Oregon Public Broadcasting, Amelia Templeton reports.
In parts of the state where COVID-19 is spreading, Governor Kate Brown has reimposed a total ban on indoor dining and limited retail businesses to just 6 customers at a time. Brown has promised to start lifting the restrictions in 3 weeks. That's when data scientists predict COVID-19 cases will fall again as more Oregonians get vaccinated. The current surge in cases threatens to set back months of success. So far, Oregon's had one of the lowest rates of COVID-19 cases and deaths in the nation. State public health officials say the more contagious B117 or UK variant is behind the surge. For NPR News, I'm Amelia Templeton.
India says new coronavirus cases dipped slightly today, just under yesterday's record of more than 400,000 infections in a single day. But despite international help, overwhelmed hospitals are still scrambling for supplies. Shushmita Pathak reports.
The head of New Delhi's Batra hospital told local media their patients were without oxygen for more than an hour. Hospitals in the capital have been sending SOS messages for oxygen all week. The shortage is also affecting non-COVID patients. A children's hospital with 6 newborns in intensive care came close to running out of oxygen on Saturday. Meanwhile, India's COVID vaccination program is lagging behind. The country opened vaccine eligibility for all adults this weekend, but hospitals and clinics in several states were unable to administer shots because they ran out of them. For NPR News, I'm Sushmita Pathak in Hyderabad, India.
This is NPR. A French prosecutor has opened an investigation into violence against one of France's principal unions during a traditional May Day march in Paris this weekend. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports.
The Paris prosecutor's office says it's investigating the incident in which several dozen aggressors attacked a CGT union van at the end of an otherwise peaceful Paris May Day march. 21 CGT union members were injured. The left-wing union, one of the country's largest, says its members were also verbally assaulted with racist and homophobic insults. May 1st is International Labor Day, and workers marched across Europe. Last year's May Day gatherings were canceled because of the pandemic. This year, workers demanded more labor protections and financial support in the midst of a pandemic that's turned economies and workplaces upside down. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Paris.
The UN Migration Agency says at least 11 people drowned when a rubber dinghy carrying 24 Europe-bound migrants capsized off Libya. It's the latest shipwreck involving migrants seeking a better life in Europe. The International Organization for Migration says the Libyan Coast Guard saved 12 migrants who will be taken to a detention center. Libya has, in recent years, emerged as the dominant transit point for migrants fleeing war and poverty in Africa and the Middle East. The oil-rich country plunged into chaos following a NATO-backed uprising that toppled and killed the longtime ruler, Muammar Gaddafi, in 2011. U.S. futures contracts are trading in positive territory at last check. I'm Janine Herbst, and you're listening to NPR News.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama.
3 seconds.
The time is 5 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to the second hour of Fate Mag Radio. And I am so excited because I have been having a great time, but now I'm a little tense. I kid, I'm not that tense, because we are just about to find out more about me. And I really and truly, never mind that. Sometimes it's a little trepidatious, like, in front of all my listeners, but that's okay. I kid. Thank you so much, because I love the opportunities.
Well, Kat, the whole reason that we wrote the third book is to try to help people self-evaluate where they're at in their life and where they might be on this journey of reincarnation. And so, again, you said you were a Scorpio, which falls under the karmic part of unforgiveness. And the greatest fears of a Scorpio are betrayal, self-destruction, any loss, or failure. And we were talking on the break, and you said those all sort of fall in there.
They do.
And so those are the kind of things we're trying to include in the manual, because we literally want people to know something about their past lives, even if they don't know them. So if you know your astrological sign, you can find some of what happened in your past life that you have some karma to fix, and it should be something you should focus on. And we're trying to explain that God actually gives you an angel to specifically help you with that. So you got lots of help. So if unforgiveness was your thing in a past life, those tendencies might follow you, but you're given an angel because God wants you to overcome.
Oh, I like that.
So there's a purpose for everything that happens. There's a reason that you come back under a certain astrological sign.
Well, are you the same astrological sign every time?
No. It changes.
Really?
And you shouldn't feel bad about your sign, because all signs are necessary.
Well, we are who we are.
Yes.
As we go through, and I would think that each life's experiences create us as that person, and the experiences maybe transition with you, even if you're not aware.
Correct. So that subconsciously you're understanding and working on it, and those lessons follow you, and there's some sort of pattern that we can see, whether it's the patterns in the astrological signs. We also say patterns we see in nature, and we start talking about traits. And I'll give you just an example of one of the traits in the book. There's the loon. In the past, the loon has turned their back on themselves or on their family. And what does a loon do? It either nests well or it takes flight. So the test that a loon's going to have in this life is whether they're going to take flight and abandon their family again. So sometimes you can be a loon, something we see in nature. Those are the kind of things that are in this. So if you see that you're in a situation in this life, and I'll give you an example. You may have to abandon your husband who is conceited and is over and controlling because you need to be in control of yourself. However, in doing that, you can't abandon your kids.
Okay.
The loon might be that person. And the loon is going to have some unforgiveness. So again, you might not have an angel to help you with that unforgiveness because that trait is something that was assigned to try to help you learn how to be a good nester and staying at home with your family.
Okay.
Because you abandoned them in the past. But each one of these things we can all see in someone we know. Someone who ran from a bad relationship but sort of abandoned the children at the same time.
Okay.
Or we might know someone who is really in their head all the time, and that trait is called esoteric highness. They really turn their back on everyone because they're only concerned with themselves. And those people are actually very jealous, selfish, and maybe even conceited. So they have all of those karmic issues to deal with. But if you're always in your head and you're ignoring everyone else, maybe ask your friends, where do they see you in these traits? Because
Okay.
a good friend will tell you the truth. And if
That's true.
if they see, you only want to do one thing at a time, and that's the most important task to you, and you're worried most about feeding yourself, you might have an anteater trait.
Might
Things
have a
you see in
what?
nature. An anteater trait. Something that means you only want to do one thing at a time, and the one thing you really want to do is feed yourself.
The anteater goes through life just looking for ants.
Oh,
correct.
Yep,
okay.
just going through looking for ants, just doing that one task. So most of these traits, a lot of these traits, after there's 12 of them, they're all based on what we see in nature. And those traits are, there's mother bull, there's the owl, the anteater, the loon, the squirrel, the elephant, the willow, the camel's hump, and then esoteric highness, which Dave just talked about. There's the rainbow trait, the crystal trait, and the warm trait. Those are all outlined in there, as well as your astrological signs and your archetypes. And again, with the archetypes, you can talk to your family and your friends, because unless you can connect yourself with your spirit guide and your spirit guide tells you specifically, you will be guessing. You'll have to depend on your friends and your family because they often will acknowledge who you are and what you do better than you do yourself. Unfortunately, that's how we are. But Dave and I, interestingly, are both fall into the archetype of lover. And lovers are always meant to connect with people. You have the magician. The magician likes to alter their own reality because they fear it. You have the orphan, and they need to belong because they fear exclusion. There's the creator. They need to create perfection, and they fear imperfection. There's the innocent, and their whole goal is happiness. And they fear, their fear is not knowing their outcome. There's the sage, and they really want knowledge. They go through life wanting more and more knowledge because they fear truth and deceit. So they want to know everything. And then there's the lover. That's the one I just told you about. Then there's the jester. They just want to have fun. They're bored. All they think about is having fun. There's the rebel, and they want change. They want some sort of a revolution, and not a huge revolution. They just want change. Some people are rebels that cause a revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they were oppressed in the past and they don't want to be oppressed again. Then there's the caregiver. They like to give of themselves because they don't like to be taken advantage of. So they put themselves in the role of giving. There's the hero, and that kind of speaks for itself. They need to be strong and admired because they fear being weak and a failure. The explorer, they need to have freedom from control. They don't like being entrapped. They need to feel free and in charge. Then there's the ruler, and they want control of everything because their fear is to not control everything. Those are all outlined in detail.
Yeah. And so if you understand and your friends help you and you put yourself in one of those classes, you could start to see where your karma probably lies and what you need to work on, because each one of those have a karmic debt tied to it. Just like your astrological sign does, your trait does, and your archetype. And so if you're given those kind of things, we like to say that that's sort of what God, your spirit guides, your angels have helped you. They've given you sort of 40 to 50% of who you are when you're coming back and what you have to work on. And then your own free will is sort of the other 50%. And it's really matching that free will to the tests that occur because of those archetypes, astrological signs, and traits that allows you to learn the lessons that you need to learn in this life.
And
one
then
of the
you
other
go
things
about
that,
working on it.
Yes, and in the manual, we also have several examples of well-known people in history, what their astrological sign was, their trait, and their archetype in 3 consecutive lives. In other words, I'll give you an example, like Cleopatra.
Mm-hmm.
We tell who she was before she was Cleopatra and after she was Cleopatra, and how those astrological signs, traits, and archetypes affected each one of those lives.
Wow.
And if you know, Kat, that one of your issues is conceit, that's something you work on. You make a decision. You can read in book 1 what conceit really means, because it's not just vanity. It's being in control of others. It's thinking you're always right. So if you think you're always right, then you need to work on a little compassion and try to listen to everyone else's point of view. If you're jealous, then you need to work on jealousy.
Mm-hmm.
If you're, in your case, apparently this unforgiveness is followed from a past life. That's one of the things you need to work on in this life, because we have to forgive others because none of us have had the exact same experience that they have.
Exactly.
We really don't know what they went through. Certainly, we talked about this in a couple of the first 2 books too. Sometimes we're born into the same family again.
Yes.
And certainly abuse runs through families, or alcoholism runs through families. It wouldn't be surprising if you were an alcoholic in a past life that you might come back in a few years as their grandson, and your father's an alcoholic because his father was an alcoholic. You need to forgive the grandfather, who was really you. So part of unforgiveness is forgiving yourself for the things you did wrong. You also need to forgive your father, and somewhere you need to overcome the alcoholism so it doesn't continue to be passed down through your family. Those are the things you'd have to work on.
Well, that's interesting. How would you recognize that as? How would you know that was you?
Some of this you would probably have to, first of all, you might not know that you were your grandfather.
Unless you had a past life regression.
Yeah, unless you had past life regression, or if you had a spontaneous memory. I'm going to recommend another book, even though we're here telling about ours. If you ever want to know about children and families that cross back and forth, you should read Carol Bowman's book, and I don't remember, it's Children Returning from Heaven or something close to that is the title.
It's an excellent book.
Excellent. Because she has people that she's done past life regression on, but also she was very popular some 10 years ago, and she wrote a lot of people that would reach out to her and say, I've noticed my son always uses the same terms my grandfather did. And then suddenly the son would have a memory that he would never know because he never met the grandfather. So there's a lot of that does happen because we're returning the same people. Just like Carla's been my wife. She's also been my sister in a past life. She's been my friend in a past life, and she's been my mother in a past life. So
I've been your queen.
That's true. That's true.
I like that she pops that one in there. We have to take a quick station break, guys, and I know that's crazy, but we will be right back. And I do want to hear more about this queen.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Paratalk Radio is your one-stop for all things paranormal, the unknown, and the supernatural. Join us every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central for discussions and guests on topics such as ghosts, hauntings, Bigfoot, UFOs, and more. This broadcast is rated M for mature and intended for listeners over 16 on paratalkradio.com.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I am so glad that you are here with me because I am having the best time with David Bettenhausen and Carla Bogni-Kidd. We are discussing their book, The Manual, and I've got to tell you that I am just fascinated by this, and I'm having a great time learning. And their website, thegiftofpastlives.com, is something that you should go and check out. They're also on Instagram and Facebook. They're just everywhere you want to be, right?
We're not great
So-
about Instagram, Kat.
Me
We're on
either.
Facebook.
I'm terrible at Instagram. And it's supposed to be such a great marketing tool. Sherry says her too. But
You have to know how to use it.
It's an age thing, I think, Kat.
I think I would agree with that, which is very frustrating because that doesn't slow down.
No.
But we were discussing all of the things, and I'm really amazed by these archetypes and traits, because I would never have thought that your astrological sign could take you through such. And does this hold true to your knowledge? Like if you came back, you wouldn't necessarily be the same astrological sign, so you would have different issues based on the color with your angel.
Correct.
To work on, correct? Okay.
Correct. That's why this tries to help you self-evaluate, because you might have been, I'll give you an example, a squirrel in a past life who was a Scorpio, which would mean a squirrel is somebody who can never stand still and goes all day long running and running and running. And in the next life, you might come back because the squirrel was running because it was always worried about what it was doing. It was going to keep busy. So it might have been a little selfish. And so that squirrel might come back in the next life as an elephant, having to plod through life, one thing at a time, trying to slow you down, trying to make you think. And maybe you won't be a Scorpio in the next life because you're going to come back because you were selfish as a squirrel. You might come back now as a Pisces, who's an elephant who just plods through life, slowly determining every step that he takes, so that you take time to evaluate yourself in the next life to determine what lessons I'm really supposed to be learning and how am I really supposed to be acting. Does that make sense?
I think that would be so relaxing. I mean, seriously. Truly. And I found the question that I had not asked. And Sherry had wanted to know, can pets and animals come back? And do they have past lives?
All right, Kat. Some people really don't like this part of the discussion when we have this.
That's okay.
But we're going to say, we usually say that animals have a soul like or a soul light because they really function without making conscious decisions that cause karma. So they really don't have to have new lessons. Animals come to serve and love, and they're already perfect when they get here. And this is also in the manual. We discussed the fact that all animals get to go back to heaven. We've seen animals, they all reside on plane 4, which is a very high level in heaven. They don't have to come back, and they get to be animals. And you can still connect with your animals in a past life, from your past lives or this life, because they're there. They have an animal caretaker who's taking care of them. They get to be, your dog, when it got old and could no longer play, now gets to play in heaven.
And
Well,
the other
because
thing is
go ahead.
Animals operate on instinct, and they only come to us to help us or to love us. They don't do naughty things, bad things. They don't create karma. So therefore, they have like a soul essence. Our body our soul is what carries our karma. But an animal doesn't have to do that because they're pure love.
Right.
And Kat, I don't know if you've had this experience. Many people have had the experience where there are mediums and psychics who actually have experienced their animals that have passed over. And or we've been on podcasts where people have experienced the ghost of one of their past animals or another animal. So all animals pass over. All animals get to go to heaven. They don't have to repeat the cycle. I guess you would say, if you were going religiously, they're not created in the same image that humans are.
But I have seen one of my dogs in my house. And she didn't even, I mean, she came down the hall, made the dog leg, went into the kitchen, and did her thing. But she wasn't white. I mean, she was a solid white, beautiful girl. And she was translucent when I saw her.
Yes.
So what
Absolutely.
was that?
You would say that is your dog's essence. Your dog is in heaven, has passed over, and the dog was reaching out and trying to visit you. Why wouldn't your animal still love you?
Well, she would, because she had 4 homes and we were her only safe one. So she was fabulous.
Yep. So she's still visiting because she wants to connect with you.
Okay.
You're a beautiful memory.
She is too. But
now, on the other side of this, Kat, well, I'll give you a little bit of the other lessons. If you believe that animals, trees, or rocks have a soul, what lesson do you learn as a rock or a tree? What lesson do you learn as an animal? If animals had souls, we would all have to be vegetarian because murder is still one of those laws of the universe that we're not supposed to kill a soul. To kill a soul shortens its ability to learn a lesson, so we would all have to be vegetarian. Of course, if you believe animals have a soul and you can't kill them, then you'd have to probably believe that plants have a soul. So we can't be vegetarian either because we can't pick a plant and eat it. And we can't, if you believe that a rock or a star has a soul, the problem with that is if it's a rock, then can you actually break a rock up and make cement and build a house? And what happens, because if you were a star who had a soul out in the universe, your life would be millions and millions and billions of years old. So
well, you could already be gone.
And you could already be gone here because those stars are already gone millions of years ago that we see now.
Right. Well, I get that. I do think that everything is connected through energy. I don't think that everything has a soul. As in, correct. When God breathed life into man.
Correct.
You know, his essence into us.
You didn't mean man exactly, right?
Right.
Yes. You got to be careful. Carla would say man, woman.
Good point.
I was thinking of my ex-husband.
Well, that's funny. But no, not specifically. Into humans, into his human. Yes.
Okay.
But and I have one too, so yes.
So, Kat, this is just another strange coincidence that occurs as we're writing the books. There are sections in each of our books. In The Gift of Past Lives, when you read the sections, they spell out I am. If you read the sections in Hell No, the sections actually spell out this is not the Alpha, this is the Omega. And if you read the manual, and you read the sections, it spells out image. So the 3 books ended up with literally almost what I would call biblical realities, because they come out as I am Alpha and Omega, and then the last one says image. And that's how the sections spell out.
Well, I like that.
Yeah, and we didn't actually know that was going to happen until it was done.
I like that even more.
And it spelled those things out.
You know, that is actually very nifty, I think.
There's an intelligent designer.
Well, there sure is. Oh, here's an interesting question. Are you up for this?
Sure.
We're always.
Well, how do you feel, or do you feel that demons affect any of these past lives and these angels?
It's a great question, Kat.
It is.
And we're going to, and I'm going to try to explain this as well as I can.
Well, you're doing a good job so far. I have confidence.
All right. So some of this is actually discussed in the manual a little bit, and some across both the other books. So you have to realize that in heaven there are souls waiting to come back. There's a time between lives, and they're waiting for the right time to come back so that their astrological signs match and that their soul group is returning, all of those things. So they're waiting.
Dave, give an example of that. Why about the cycling?
Okay. So, here's an example. If I died at 40, part of my soul group might still live on, so they may not be coming back because they lived to 80. So there's 40 years that I might be waiting to go back with my same soul group or family mates and karmic mates. So that period of time in between, first I had a past life review, I went through atonement, I learned what I did wrong, and then I'm really watching the world. During that time, because I know that I made mistakes, I may want to try to influence the world that's here so that it's a better world for me. So I might try to communicate with those people that are here. And if I find someone who's open and they listen and I can communicate with them, I might influence them to do things or ask them to do things so that my life when I come back on earth is better. That's my definition of a demon. If you go back to biblical things, the Book of Enoch, and etc., you will find a whole group of people that they called the Watchers.
Yes.
Okay, there were angels and Watchers, and they assumed that Watchers were a different class of angel. I would say the Watchers are a different class of person, and that your spirit guide is a type of Watcher, and he's your individual spirit guide and your immediate small soul group were all created at once. So Isabella, and it's interesting, Isabella, Carla, and two other souls were all created at the same time. They form a pod. That pod is a 12-sided thing, which is where the 12 sides of humanity come in with the zodiac signs, with your archetypes, with your astrological signs, and your traits. The 12 faces of that pod, which is a dodecahedron, is where you're expressed when you placed back in Earth. But while you're waiting in that dodecahedron up there in heaven, you're potentially trying to influence the world that you're going to come back to. That's a Watcher, and even in the Book of Enoch or in the early Bible stuff, they're talking about a sinful creature who came from heaven, came down to earth, and had sex with women. That's what the Watcher story is. The Watcher story is someone who's not completed their path, and or if you want to call that sinned in their past life, is returning to earth and bringing part of their karma with them And of course, they're going to mate with whoever they meet. And so that's the watchers from heaven. It's the people waiting to come back. It's the spirit guides who are watching what's going on and trying to learn lessons and help people along their path. So I think demons are something that's within us that we carry back to earth with us because we have karma to fix. And sometimes what we experience as demons is those people in the spirit world, spiritual world, or the lower levels of heaven that still have to come back that are trying to influence us. And however your mind will conjure that up, because they don't have a physical experience, a physical thing. They're expressing their personality to you. And as you see it as ugly, deformed, and strange, or you think it's a strange gray man, or whatever, I think it's the spirit of someone who had a life on earth who's returning.
But not as a human at that point.
But they're not yet human.
Right.
Correct.
Okay. That's an interesting concept. So,
again, Kat, we could tell you a little interesting story about fallen angels, or we can make people read the book. But
yes,
we hope
I go for read the book.
Okay, let them read the book, and they'll hear about fallen angels.
Yes, because I think that whole story is fascinating, and I actually got to hear Eric von Daniken lecture 4 times a couple of years ago through the summer, and the Book of Enoch is what actually set him on his path of global exploration. I mean, he worked as a waiter. He would work for a few months, make some money, go on an expedition somewhere, run out of money, come back, work some more. I mean, like everybody else, you work for your vacays, right? And so, but the Book of Enoch tremendously influenced him, because the village where he grew up and went to school, it was a Jesuit school. And so one of the priests, because he was so inquisitive, said, well, here. And they had an original Book of Enoch. And so he read it. And I found it interesting that he was taken aside to be educated with that, and became the human that he is now, because he's a fascinating man. But but the Watchers are something that interested him as well, and I think that's where the extraterrestrial side of things came into play. So
I understand that, Kat. If you look at all religions, if you look back at Sumerian religion and their story of the Anunnaki,
yes,
all religions are based on something that came not of this earth. So whether they consider that an extraterrestrial, angels are not of this earth, spirit guides are not of this earth, and God is not of this earth. So there's an experience with that which is not of this earth, and it becomes a story for all cultures of some kind. It's no different than the god Zeus lives up on a mountain, Mount Olympus. It's no different than the pyramids were built to look like a mountain because gods lived up on top of the mountain, because gods don't live with us.
That's interesting. Oh dear, we have to take our final break. How does this happen? But we will be right back. Y'all come back too. And if you've got questions, pop them in there. Last chance. So we'll see you on the flip side.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the World Wide Web of Weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back for the final segment of Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. And I am so excited because I love being affiliated with Fate Magazine. You know, it's been in publication since 1948, the longest running paranormal genre magazine ever. So I am very fortunate, and be sure and check fatemag.com, because if your subscription has run out, you can renew there. You can grab a t-shirt, you can get some archives. You'd be amazed at what all Phyllis can get you. And I am so thankful because it gives me a chance to talk with people like Dave and Carla. And this has been I can't believe it's been 2 hours. We have a quick question in chat, and that is, have you discovered anything in religion and all that you've researched about this? They can say, holy cow, this part of religion can't possibly be true. And she says she's not sure she worded that right, but hope you understand the question. And this is a woman after my own heart.
So, Kat, is there things in religion that are definitely not true?
Can't possibly.
Yes, I have to say, can't possibly be true. I hate to even do this, but in the Bible, there's some stories on Jesus that actually contradict each other. There's a story that says after he died, he told everybody to stay in Jerusalem, and then there's a story, the same. One is in Luke and one is in Mark. And then the other one, it says, Jesus came and showed to us and told us all to immediately go to Galilee. And the one story says, Jesus told us not to leave Jerusalem. Both can't be true.
And it's got to be one way or the other.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there's
lots of discrepancies.
There's lots of discrepancies. If you're talking about early church doctrine, you find that Origen of Alexandria, Egypt, was a Jewish Greek historian who converted and wrote almost all of the beginning liturgy and work in the Catholic Church in about 200 AD. Mm-hmm. And he wrote that transmigration of the soul and preexistence of the soul before your time on earth would be what he would read into the Bible. 200 years later, he also wrote that Jesus was created from God and was not of the same substance. So this was the beginning. His his biblical interpretation and what was part of the first liturgy of the Catholic Church. 200 years later, after his death, he was excommunicated because transmigration and reincarnation are the same thing, and that the church had decided that Jesus was the same substance as God and was not created by God. And so since he wrote the first part, he had to be excommunicated as a heretic after he was already dead. So again, that's an interesting story that shows some strange workings of the early church.
Well, the whole workings of the early church seem to be a little bit askew.
Yes.
A lot.
But they were dealing with trying to document a reality that was not something any of them had ever experienced as well.
Correct. So, when you see those kind of things where there's some discrepancies, you realize that the story is sort of the best fit as they compromised along the way.
Right.
Well, if it's the best fit as they compromised along the way, then you have to question whether it's fully inspired or not. Is it interpreted by man? Yes. Is the Bible like any other channeled work? Yes. It's a channeled work that was interpreted by man with some great lessons as God tried to reach out and teach people. I'm not sure the same is not true of the Upakshas in India and the Vedic texts. I'm not sure, that God is not trying to reach out into all of those people, trying to somehow reveal the reality. However, man had to be created with some sort of ego or it would not survive. And because of that, we've had to overcome ego ever since the beginning. And we had to be given free will, or else we couldn't love. And if we couldn't love God back. And we had to be created for no reason except that God wished to love. And because of that, we have our ego and we interpret things different than God might interpret things because we can't truly understand God.
And yet, part of him lives in each of us.
Yet part of him lives in each of us. This is another part of that lesson from the Bible that I take. If you read all the way from the Adam and Eve story, which is just a story, because certainly there was more than one couple at the beginning. We also addressed that in the book. But if you look at, yes, and I think in this one too, in the manual too. But if you look at that story, it is really the story of God and man being in presence, and then man is taken out of Eden, but God is still in its presence. And if you look at all the lessons, it is actually the Jesus lesson that says, God lives in you. It's really make your temple clean, do the right things. That's part of the Jewish lesson is eat clean, live clean, don't sin, don't do those things. Try to make your body as pure as it can.
Right.
Because the temple of God is actually inside you. The temple of God is not a building or the tent or that was the original, tabernacle or the original synagogue or the church. The temple of God is in you. And so that's really the lesson that's in all of this, is try to clean your temple. And when your temple is clean and you can be in God's presence again, you get to return home.
Well, is that when you have the end of your
cycles of reincarnation?
Yes.
Correct. That's
and
when
you're done.
When you're finally done. And then you return as the spark of love in which you were created.
Boy, I know that seems a long way off based on me. And that's just the way that is, right? Because we all fail.
We all fail, and we're all trying to learn. And we have so much to overcome because not only do we have our individual karma, we have group karma. You know, we still have things like the Holocaust and people fleeing Bosnia and oppression all the way around the world. And somewhere we need to address that as human beings. Because even if we just allow that to happen, is that, you know, we can try to keep our nose clean, but does that mean we get to ignore all the wrongs that happen? Because if the United States supports this regime and that regime does horrible things, are we developing some group karma? Probably. So we have things that we have to fix.
Well, you know, and even if you don't support it, you know, you have the government of China who is busily ethnically cleansing their nation.
Correct.
Right now. You have, you know, they did that before with the Tibetans. That's why all of the monks were either killed or had to flee to India. And getting over those Himalayas is no cakewalk, as it were. And now they're doing it with Islamists. And, you know, at what point? They're huge. Their nation is huge. Their military is huge. Their financial expertise on the globe is huge.
Their karma is huge.
Their karma is huge, especially now. But
their group karma.
Yes. And, you know, you sit back and you look at that and it's like, this has been generations that have been doing these things. How do you combat this? And so it makes one wonder if it's something that you cannot address, are you still responsible for that?
So there is a difference somewhere in all this, Kat, where you say, I'm going to make a decision that this is something I don't support. Now, here in the United States, that may mean that you're doing that, and I don't like to get political, but that may mean you vote for the person that doesn't accept what is happening in China or Bosnia or Somalia into office, because as a human, you have to believe that what's happening there is wrong. We have a world that really still has plenty. We're actually, interestingly enough, Kat, we're living at the highest standard of living in the world that it's ever had.
Yes.
We're actually living in a world right now that has had the most peace and the less death and the less war than it has ever had. So if we look at those things that are still terrible, we know they need to be addressed. But somewhere, this world is growing. It is actually changing, and it is better than it was.
I agree.
I have to believe that there is hope, and that there's reason to believe that we'll return back to God, Creator, maybe one at a time, a few at a time, but that we know, and this is also in the manual, that there's multiple planes in heaven, and that people go to a higher and higher planes for various reasons, and that when the last person on earth leaves this earth, God plans to take everyone to the seventh plane that God lives on as one. Which means if God has a plan for us all to return, I believe we're all going to return.
Well, his plans don't often go astray. We go astray and set things off kilter.
But right. If we just listen to the lessons, Live without conceit, selfish, jealousy, and unforgiveness, and always make every decision and intention out of love. You can overcome your karma. As a group, we can overcome our group karmas. As a humanity, we can overcome, and we can return back to God as we were created.
And on that note, we're out of time. This has been brilliant. Thank you so much for being here. And, I think that this was definitely a conversation meant to happen. And I am so excited that it did. I am looking forward to completely reading this book. And for all of our listeners, you can find it. Go to Amazon and just look up. You can look it up by Dave and Carla's names, and they're right there on the event. You can pull them.
Or you can buy it on our website.
Or you can buy it on their website, which...
Yep, there's links on the website.
Yes, and that would be thegiftofpastlives.com. And Sherry beat me to it that, these are a little bit of a tough time that we're going through, but you can always be the change. And if you are so motivated, you can find these t-shirts all over the place just so you can let people know they too can. You don't have to preach. You can just say, check this out. So we will see you next week. Same cat time, same cat channel. Thank you so much. Good night.
Night, Cat.